Please be seated. I've lived in the Midwest almost my entire adult life, and I regret to inform you that you do Thanksgiving wrong. I grew up going to Thanksgiving every single year in Shreveport, Louisiana. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and every Tuesday before Thanksgiving, my family would pile in the car and take the 3-hour drive to my grandparents' house. And there were no potatoes. I don't understand this thing with potatoes. There were no sweet potatoes, there were no mashed potatoes, there were no twice-baked potatoes, there was no green bean casserole, there was no stuffing. I just don't get it. There were no marshmallows. I have very strong opinions about the food that should be served at Thanksgiving. I just want to make that really clear. And the reason is because I have these vivid, intense, powerful memories of cooking in the kitchen with my grandmother. My grandmother was 5'2" and fierce. I'm the daughter of the daughter of the daughter of the daughter. I come from a long line of strong Southern women. And my grandmother was definitely one of them. She had everything down to military level precision. With 2 ovens and 20 plus people to feed, she knew what she was doing. It was something exceptional. It started off simple with my jobs with pumpkin pie. And as I got older, I got to cut things. That was very exciting. And as I got even older, I got to set the place cards, where one of those unusual, my grandmother is left-handed. She had no left-handed children, but she has 5 left-handed grandchildren. And I was responsible later on for setting the place cards so that nobody bumped elbows with left-handed people. All the left-handed people could live in peace from having their elbows bumped for once in their life. It was a time of real joy that I treasure and I miss deeply. The gospel passage that we hear this evening is a bit complicated. We're in the middle of a complicated discourse that Jesus gives. It's the famous, "I am the bread of life." What comes right before this, though, is the feeding of the 5,000. Now, it's important that feeding miracles occur in all 4 gospel passages. The 4 gospel writers agree on almost nothing. Jesus died on a cross, he was the Messiah, and he fed people. And that's really about it. Everything else they disagree about. In John's gospel, it's really interesting though. The final meal that he shares with his disciples a year after this feeding is not the institution of the Eucharist. It's not a memory meal. It's just a meal. What you might remember that's specific about John's final meal with the disciples is that Jesus washes the disciples' feet. His final act with his disciples is to eat with them and to serve them and to teach them. And at that final meal, Jesus says to his disciples, "I have given you a new commandment, to love one another as I have loved you." This feeding miracle is one of the ways that Jesus shows what love looks like. Jesus takes 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes and feeds thousands. And there's an abundance to spare. They're asking about the manna because when the Israelites were traveling in the wilderness for 40 years, God provided them manna every day. At night, it would disappear. You couldn't save it. You couldn't keep it. It was fresh every single day. And so people are wondering, is this a prophet like Moses who can channel that kind of power? And Jesus says, no. It's not about the actual things that I can do. It's that I am the bread of life. I am the one for whom all things are possible. We hear these echoes of I am the resurrection, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the bread of life. It almost feels redundant because to say bread is to give life. In cultures all around the world, there's some kind of grain which is heated up and put stuff on it and you eat it. You got empanadas, you got tortillas, you got pizza, you got toast, you got crumpets. I know, they're delicious, aren't they? Jesus is not saying, I'm going to give you the physical food. I'm the spiritual food that is going to feed you. I've heard many times that there's a God-sized hole in all of us, and we like to fill it up with stuff. Money, booze, sex, pride, picky the thing, food. And what it is to live a spiritual life is to clear that stuff out, to make space to let God in. It's to not turn the things into the altar. It's to see what the altar is actually pointing us towards, and that is Christ. Mimi died 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And it's been 12 years since I had Thanksgiving like I did in Shreveport, Louisiana for most of my life. And what I've realized is it's not about the dressing, the pumpkin pie, the pecan pie, the kashaw, the corn casserole, the broccoli casserole, the rolls. It's not about the place cards. It's not about the napkin rings. It's not about the actual food. It's that on Thanksgiving Day, for 22 years of my life, I got a glimpse into what the kingdom of heaven might look like. I was loved, I was cherished, I was seen, I was cared for. At Thanksgiving Day, Mimi would never let us say a bad word towards each other. Any problems we had, we left them at the door and we shared a meal together. It took me a long time to understand that a lot of people don't look forward to Thanksgiving because their relatives fight. And Mimi, the little general, would not tolerate that. She'd just get this look in her eye, and you knew to cut it out. Mimi saw her children by love, her grandchildren by love, and gave them each what they needed. For me, I needed those jobs. I wanted to help. I wanted to participate. For my older sister, it was making sure that the fudge was always in the goodie box. For my dad, it was making sure that he knew that he was wanted and loved. For each person, Mimi had the gift of knowing how to love them best. And in that, she showed me Christ's love. In that final commandment, Jesus said, I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other as I have loved you. Jesus puts flesh and bone and movement to the word love. We are called to feed each other as I have fed you. We are called to serve each other as I have served you. We are called to love one another as I have loved you. So if you are sad because your Thanksgiving in Shreveport isn't happening this year, know that you are not alone. But find Christ's light in this world. And if you can't find it, we are called to be it. Love one another as I have loved you. Amen.